Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the current sessions and on the last day of the City by City Festival. I heard it's been quite interesting conversations and people from all over the world. And I'm happy to start this session, which is called Next Steps from Start Mobility. And the idea here is to really discuss, all the new trends and quite a very interesting projects that are going on these topics in Europe and all over the world. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers here from Finland, from Austria, from the UK and other places. So I think it will be a quite interesting session for us to be discussing and as hopefully we move out of this COVID this year and we going back to move around cities. I think we really need to see the way we are now working on mobility and using technologies as an enabler for mobility in different sectors. Well, I'm Guillermo Johnson. I'm head of global partnerships at Connected Places Catapult. So based in London, I'm really happy to be connected with all of you here. And for the session, we're going to have Seppo Haataja from Tampere, Finland, Olaf-Gerd Gemein from ODALA, this ODALA project, Claudia Luger-Bazinger from Salzburg Research, and Helge Wundemann from University College London. So welcome all panelists to the session, and looking forward to hear your speech. We have the Q&A here also on the group, so feel free to share any questions you may have during the presentations, and also feel free to use the chat. And I think after the presentations we can have a Q&A session as we have quite limited time. So in order to get going, and I think we have a lot to hear here from our panelists, I would like to invite Seppo from the great city of Tampere in Finland to start his presentation. Seppo, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
I'm Seppo Haataja. This is Tampere, and I'm heading the Smart Tampere Ecosystem Program. And the city of Tampere, by the way, we are one of the founding members of OSC, and it has been very interesting to listen this whole morning with various stories, and they are quite well online what we are also doing in Tampere and what we have done or will done in the future. So I'm basically very quickly say a few words about what is Tampere, what we are doing within the mobility, and what next, and that's basically what I'm going to do shortly now. So Tampere is a growing city. We are 200 kilometers northwest from Helsinki metropolitan area. We have a quite long industry history. We have now 235,000 inhabitants, but as said, we are growing quite fast. So we are also having quite a long ICT history already in Finland and all that sort of thing. So this is just the background of what we are. By the way, this is a picture from Lake Näsijärvi, and based on our carbon neutrality, we really hope that the winters are like this also in the future, and not like the slush in Helsinki. I don't mean the slush event, but the weather. It might be quite nasty also in Finland in wintertime. So very shortly about various themes. We have carried out economic development or program based of economic development in Tampere now roughly 20 years, and Smart Tampere is the previous program that we were doing in ecosystem development, and this is a little bit busy picture. I'm not going to go to the details of all those themes, but smart mobility is one important part of our ecosystem development. And by this morning, we heard a lot about IoT, and some other cases, so that there is a lot of teams that we are also executing in IoT and other artificial intelligence and safety security that already many other countries and cities are carrying out in Europe in the same way. So just few examples of what we have done in this area. This is Tampere, Finland application. App is created together with a few companies or based on our hackathon case example. And actually, Eddie Hardog mentioned this carbon footprint made in Lahti. So here is just one example. Maybe you can see in the screen we have personalized, this is the one example of related to mobility, so that in this Tampere, Finland application, you are basically able to collect various services that as a citizen would like to use. And there is related to mobility. Now you can also pay your bus or tram card by your phone, or you can follow your carbon footprint. So these are examples that we are now based on this evolution of various services that we are developed during last couple of years, so that they are now coming visible for the citizen. And I think this is also important to keep in mind, that why we are doing these kind of activities. So then very shortly, platforms, we are talking about mobility platforms. One example is this autonomous driving test area. It's there is a picture from district of Hervanta, and there we have almost 3 kilometers now. It's very hard to maybe see here in the picture. It is illustrated in digital twin concept, so that it's the point here is that we are able to build up a test environment in real city environment, so that it's not isolated like most of the autonomous driving test areas. At the moment in Europe, there is a lot of those, but not very many in the real city environment. So this is of course challenging, but also giving some of the real flavor for the citizens, so that what is this autonomous driving, what are the opportunities, and maybe what are the challenges. So this is one example of this kind of activity. Another major thing in Tampere, what we have done within the public transportation, is the huge investment of fast tram transportation system. And we have built, covering the city center at the moment, the fast tram. It has been a huge investment, and it started the operation roughly half a year ago. So it is a brand new, and it's going to change the whole public transportation ecosystem. And these terms, it's a Tampere Urban Rail Mobility Service Living Lab. So the point here is that you can see the tram fleet in the middle of the picture, including 3 cabins. The new thing is that we have invested 1 extra cabin, so that it's total fleet that will be allocated just for the testing purpose, so that there is a picture of a little bit busy picture of various stakeholders that are able to come and join together with Technical Research Center of Finland, City of Tampere, and the rail company, so that testing new services, not just related to tram technology, but also other mobility as a service or any other technologies, video surveillance and that sort of thing. So that this is the quite unique opportunity in Europe at the moment to have this kind of mobility living lab in the real environment. So this is one major topic that we are now doing in Tampere. So there is a lot of question that what after a smart city, what is the next big thing, and based on what we heard already in this city by city conference or festival yesterday and today, so that there's a lot of cities are now developing many of those technical trials related to smart cities. So we as a quite many of other cities are seeing the future, so that what is the value for the citizens and of course for the industry and companies about the smart city environment. And I think it's and we think very strongly that it's the data. So that we are now starting to implement the next phase of the Smart Tampere program, that is part of the mayor program, and now it's the data-driven city for citizens is going to be the next one, so that we using a lot of this artificial intelligence and all those lessons learned that we have done in the Smart Tampere, and together with local stakeholders, national level with CxC strategy, and widely also with the OSC community in EU level. So this is basically what we are going to do. And our new district that we are implementing this, by the way, we have also the carbon neutrality target 2030, but the Hiedanranta is the new district. It's very near the city center, and it's the old factory area that will be rebuilt totally from the empty table, so that there will be roughly 25,000 inhabitants and roughly 10,000 jobs in the same area. So, and the point here is that based on all these experiments that we have already done and doing also together with other stakeholders, we try to also reach this kind of carbon negative district. So this is one thing that is also related to what we are seeking for the sustainable and carbon neutrality city of Tampere. And based on this, we are also quite well online with the Digital Compass 2030 that we have already heard also in the City by City festival during these years, so that during these days, so that all this what we are doing is also linked with what OSC and other stakeholders in Europe are doing these days. So based on these few words, I would like to stop here and also leave time for the other panelists. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Seppo. That was very interesting. I mean, as a very progressive city with carbon neutral objectives for by 2030, and using apps, all these platforms, and also all this very interesting living lab with the tram, and so a lot going on there. Yeah, and so just conscious of time, I'm just gonna hand over now to Olaf-Gerd Gemein from the city of Kiel and also from ODALA. So he has some work about improvement of data management in cities. So please, Olaf, the floor is yours now. Thank you very much.
So thank you, then starting again, thank you for this invitation, and looking at all the last 1.5, 2 days, it's really impressive to see how we as a global network really making steps forward into digitization of cities. And this session is about Next Stop for Smart Mobility. And let me give you some background information about this ODALA project, Open Data Lake, which brings or is built on many of the principles and technologies we in ODALA, Fireware, Gaia X, and so on have built in the past, whatever I would say 10 years or so. And let me give you an introduction about this. And I can promise you the last slide will be the most complicated, but also the most interesting one. So keep stay tuned, and we will see. Slide, please. The starting point. Next, yeah, the starting point, as we all know, was data silos. I don't know, since whatever 25 years, we started with data as living and moving around in silos, and actually we're talking about space. And I have tried to bring an order in these paradigms. So from silos over cloud, hubs, portals, platforms, lakes, twins, and space. So there's a kind of evolution in the naming. However, as I will say, 80% of the data are still living in silos. And all the way along this evolution, we really try to get a better access, more interoperability, and so on for all of this. But still, I would say, less than 1.0% of the data are living in spaces today. However, in the last 2.5 days, we talked about a lot of these spaces. So that's why, of course, everyone is aiming to be part of this data space and Gaia X idea. And we heard a lot of this. But this is just to give a little bit of background. We are still living in the world where the data is mostly in silos. And all our concepts around have to think about how we can achieve interoperability and moving data between these different systems which are around us. Next slide, please. And of course, the biggest barriers are still interoperability. And when you look at the last 10 or 15 years, it was an assumption that it's about a technical interoperability. And we all focused on, let's agree on standards and data models and APIs and all of that thing. But it turns out, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, that a lot of interoperability is also needed in understanding each other. So semantic, cultural, legal, governance, and so on. And that the technical interoperability is just a part. And when you see here in this small graphic, it's just one small part of the problem we want to tackle. And interoperability have to be also mitigating all the interests, getting an understanding about data sovereignty, which is a legal aspect, and so on. And we have to look at interoperability of all these levels. And this is also part of this ODALA project. Next slide, please. And as we talking since 1.5 years, based on this wonderful arrangement where the starting point was between France and Germany, we come up now with the X idea, so cross-X. And now we're trying to get all the data moving around cross silos, cross stakeholders. We really want to mitigate interest between stakeholders, cross domain, across country. So Europe is really stepping around and say, hey, we have the new recipe for getting data sovereignty and smooth data interoperability on country level or on European level. Cross legal, we have legal frameworks, and of course we are aiming for cross continent. So the X is always around us, and Gaia X as the organization bringing this idea forward, coming up with, as you see here, this picture where all the data ecosystems and the infrastructure ecosystems are smoothly working together and using the X as a symbol for cross-domain, stakeholder, country, and legal interoperability. Next slide, please. And the mobility case is, of course, one of the most complicated ones. So mobility is a data case, as you can see, right? So it's every of these data in the mobility era are living in closed silos. The shared of the data have very limitations between of different reasons. There are multiple standards, more than a dozen or even more. The stakeholder interest clashes because there are public transport and private and micromobility, new ones coming in, and city interests and so on. So there are a lot of stakeholders where we need negotiations between their interests and how they can be part of an ecosystem. And the semantics differ everywhere. So when you're talking about travel data, even the naming of a specific entity is different in different languages. Also the meaning, when you're looking from the public transport to the private, it's different from private to transport and so on. And of course, digitalization is lagging behind. So not every taxi driver is digital. And when you're coming here to Germany and trying to pay a taxi with your credit card, you have to ask before, because 90% of the taxi drivers even have no possibility for a digital payment. And I don't know if it's how it looks like in other countries, but it's not like that. Next slide, please. And to solve this, of course, we come up with ODALA, right? So, and as you can see here, we have started with an idea of a lake, because a couple of years ago, this was really a big effort to say, okay, we're starting from platforms and hubs and so on. Let's do a lake, right? So where real-time data and static data comes together and so on. And then when the train was running and we are started to do what we promised, we realized that this idea about digital twins, the Gaia X concepts, the data spaces concept and so on, everything was around us. And now we have more ambitions. So we want to go from a lake, but we want to reach the sky and want to be part of the space with this project. And of course, we want now, using the specifications from the data space, as the International Data Space Association, we want to be a reference, and I will show you later this to Gaia X and the My Data principles. Of course, we are implementing some of the MIMS, and of course, CHEF building blocks, because you can see here, we are grateful to have received funding from the European Commission under the CHEF Connected European Facilities Program. Of course, therefore, we using some of the CHEF building blocks, starting from the context broker, but also others. We have a marketplace and so on. And we want, and it's also clear that we are not living isolated with our project. So we want to be connected with other data portals, national data portals, local data portals, local data sources from mobility providers and other spaces. And we want to do this cross-domain and cross-country, because we are a European project in 5 different countries. And what we're doing will be then also cross-country and not only cross-domain. And of course, everybody knows public money, public code. Everything will be open source. Therefore, it will be replicable and portable. So that's the aim of the ODALA project, which is running now in the half. So next slide, please. And what we are building on, and what we have achieved, and in other projects as well, and I want to mention this here on the left-hand side, you see a publication where I was quite grateful to support and to contribute to, which is hosted by Ertico. It's a Mars Alliance, Mobility as a Service Alliance, where a couple of 100 stakeholders across the world, no, more than 100 stakeholders across the world, are working together for interoperability of data models, APIs, and data architecture. And this is a quite interesting thing. And on the left-hand side, you see common pivotal points of interoperability. We all know this, coming to the minimum interoperability mechanisms. And we have heard about a lot of these standards. This kind of framework is really able to help us now to apply these technologies into the real world to enable public procurement. And on the next slide, please, you see a small architecture, and I will enhance it in a second, where we really see that the architectures from a monolithic.
So I think we have a bit of a technical problem with Olaf. I don't know if he's.
I'm
okay.
just going in and out. So this, anyway, my last slide. So it shows you should look like and will look like. This topology and this in the ODALA project. We will data spaces and so on. And everybody, it's an open group. Everybody is invited to effort to make it happen based on these concepts in the rubber on the road. Thanks for. And
perfect.
Yeah.
No.
For any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Olaf. I think it's again a very interesting presentation about open lake data all the way to space, and so I think we have a lot to discuss here. And then I think I already have some questions, but I think let me just move on to Claudia Luger-Bazinger from the Salzburg research to talk about the diamond, and then we can have a discussion in the end. So thank you very much, Claudia. The floor is yours.
So. Thank you for the short introduction. My name is Claudia Luger-Bazinger. I'm from Salzburg Research, and I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about a current research project that we have that is called Dynamic Mobility Nudge. And in this project, we are investigating how we could change mobility behavior with situation-aware digital nudging. So many of you might have heard the term nudging. It's basically a technique for behavior change. It is often described as a way to steer people's behavior into a desired direction. It is basically a collection of different methods that stem from psychology and also from behavioral economics. And what's very specific for nudging is that nudging does not ban or restrict any options. So people are still free to choose whatever they want, but nudging seeks to design an environment that favors a certain decision and a certain behavior. And Also, many of you, if you think about your everyday life, know that many of our decisions might not be optimal or rational in the strict sense. So many decisions that we make every day are just good enough. They happen automatically. We make this decision out of habit because we've always done it this way. We also are talking about in this context about bounded rationality. So we are not making always the most rational decisions, but something that is just good enough for us. And nudging in its theory is based on these findings. And what it does, it tries to change the environment in a way that some decisions are preferred. So it changes the environment in which decisions take place. And in general, I think nudging can be seen as just one method in the bigger context of behavior change techniques. And nudging has been explored for various purposes. And why I'm talking now about nudging is that it has been recently also more and more explored for mobility behavior. So as a method to change mobility behavior, especially to change mobility behavior towards more sustainable choices. So we are exploring in our project digital situation-aware nudges, and I'm getting to that, what that means in a moment. But we all know that cities face the challenge that they need to encourage sustainable mobility. So motivating people to get away from individual car use towards public transport, towards walking, towards bicycling. But that is, of course, a challenge, and cities need to encourage this type of behavior, but they cannot or don't want always to use hard measures, so-called hard measures like regulations or laws. It's also not always possible. So, and nudging and these kinds of behavior change techniques could be one solution to this challenge cities face. And I mentioned digital nudging, and what that means, it's basically reaching people within their digital environment. So for example, on their smartphones, and that is what we are trying to do, or what we will do in this project. So the smartphones are basically our way of communicating with people in order to motivate them for more sustainable forms of transport. And what is unique about this dynamic mobility project is that we use situation-aware nudges. And what that means is that we try to take into account the context and the situation a person is currently in. Because of course that makes a difference in your decisions and in your behavior. And for representing this current situation, we try to use relevant data. So any data that might be relevant for mobility decisions. So traffic data, weather data, data on air quality, the user location, data about public transport and infrastructure, just to name a few options here. And that data will help us to determine the best timing for our nudges. And the idea behind this is that if we find the right timing, the nudge might be even more effective, and data helps support us in finding this perfect moment. Just think about when I am trying to motivate you to go to work today with your bicycle instead of your car, and I send you a text notification or notification via an app saying, hey, it's a great day to ride your bicycle, and you look out the window and it's already raining outside, or the weather forecast is really bad. This might not be the best timing for this nudge. So we are trying to determine a good timing with relevant context data. And our project, Dynamic Mobility Nudge, is a European project within the JPI Urban Europe funding program. We are 6 partners, and Salzburg Research has the project lead here. And then we have another partner from Austria and from Germany and from Sweden, also partners. And we started just this year in May, and it will be a 3-year project. And what we are currently doing in this project is that we try to develop these digital situation-aware nudging techniques. So this will be more on our part, Salzburg Research. I'm a psychologist, so I'm looking into these behavior change techniques and how to bring them into the digital space, and what situation-aware components are necessary for that. And then we have the more technical partners, and they are currently concerned with collecting the relevant data, see what is out there, how it can be prepared, and so on. And for our next step, so over the next year, we will have a proof of concept phase in Salzburg, which means that we will have a field trial with people using an app. And I should mention that we are not developing a new app for this project, but we try to connect our Diamond framework in theory with any app. So it could be used by a number of different providers, different cities maybe. But we have the proof of concept phase in Salzburg, so it will be a field trial, people using the app, and we try to test the feasibility of the technical approach. So will these situation aware nudges, will they work? Will we determine the timing and so on? And we also try to test the effects of such digital situation aware nudges on mobility behavior. So if we do that, will people really be more prone to bicycling, walking, and so on? There will also be a handbook in the project this year, I think, for interested cities who might be interested in using these kinds of digital nudges for sustainable mobility in their city. And we are also currently working on a data dashboard for visualizing the relevant context data for Salzburg. So this will basically be a view on the data about sustainable mobility within the city. We are currently working on that with our technical partners. And why I'm here today is to motivate you, encourage you, if you're interested in this project and in our findings, to please get in touch with me if you would like to know more about the project results for your city. And we are currently also looking for people who are working with sustainable mobility in cities to share a little bit about their insights they have with working with data. So what kind of data are you looking for? What indicators interest you? What would you like to see, for example, in such a dashboard? These are currently questions that come up in the project and that we would like to answer with the help of relevant stakeholders. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me and I will be happy to give you more information. As I said, my name is Claudia Luger-Bazinger from Salzburg Research, and we are the project coordinators for this project. And yes, thank you for the attention and looking forward to the other talks.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Yeah, this was very interesting. Again, using a nudge as well as a way of improving mobility as we try to reach the sustainability there. So I'm sure there is a lot of interested to follow up. I'm personally very interested as well from our work here at Connected Places Catapult. So looking forward to explore further with you. And now we have Helge Wundemann from University College London, and he's going to talk to us about artificial intelligence and this AI trial project, if I'm pronouncing right. So please, Helge, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. That's very kind. I'd like to start with saying that I'm here to present on behalf of Dr. Banyan Bari, who is a lecturer in intelligent mobility and, in fact, the coordinator and the project lead for the work that I'm presenting here today. And I will show how the power of chatbots can be embraced and improve travel experience as part of what we have done during the project, which is called AI Travel. And I would like to show you how AI travel fundamentally changes the way how we travel in our cities through artificial intelligence by promoting well-being. And that's how I have been engaged with this project. I'm doing robotics and AI at University College London. We all know that we live in an urban age and more people live within our cities. The effect that this has, we experience almost on a daily basis. So we experience overcrowded public transportation services, such as trains, buses, undergrounds, and metros. We experience long trips between home and our work because of journey delays, for instance, and uncomfortable commutes. And in particular, during this pandemic that seems to not want to stop. The number of people, of course, who are traveling on buses and undergrounds, for instance, has become extremely important to us. Millions of people who are living in our cities are struggling with these daily frustrations of city lives. And when we look at research about health and well-being in cities, we can see that the negative health impact on people living in our cities is huge and evident. They are exposed to high stress, they exercise less, and they follow a bad diet. And this results in people who live in our cities suffering from long-lasting mental illnesses, such as anxiety and depressions. And in fact, data from scientists also show that people living in our cities, in fact, suffer from mental illnesses at a disproportionately high rate compared to people who are not living in cities. When we look at travel choices of people who live in our cities, usually cost and time have been driven these travel choices. But during the last years, this has been now transferred to other factors. The effect of health and well-being, in fact, has become the top priority, so the number one priority for many travelers who are traveling within or into our cities. So we have developed a solution for this called AI Travel, which is funded over the past few years, a couple of years, by EIT Urban Mobility. So that's the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. And our solution is a form of a smartphone application that promotes health and well-being of people moving around in our cities through 3 Cs. And we have crowdsourcing, computing, and communicating. So our app generates a brand new data sets of crowdsourced preferences and feedback from people traveling in cities through a chatbot. It computes the sentiment of the user and communicates personalized routes in line with their preferences. AI Travel encourages citizens to share their personal preferences, and this is what you can see on the left-hand side. So it encourages citizens to share their personal preferences, the mental state and needs before a trip, as well as feedback during and after the commute. Then an algorithm will analyze this feedback of the users, combine the data with mobility services information that is objective and available from different APIs. So at the moment, we do focus on Google's API. And then in the final step, it suggests a personalized travel route to the user, which is, of course, then in line with their preferences and needs. As I mentioned earlier on, we have received good support, fantastic support from EIT. AI Travel, in fact, has a number of unique selling points. So our platform promotes health and well-being long-term, not only short-term, but long-term. It is also easy to use through the chatbot functions and pre-provided answers in many cases. It's platform agnostic. It is not a standalone app that is only working for one particular city with one particular network, but it is making use of objective mobility data that is then available from a service provider or another third-party API. So in order to deliver on this project over the past 2 years, we have received significant support from EIT Urban Mobility, who have believed strongly in our innovation. They have, in fact, enabled our bottom-up approach and provided significant and substantial funding of over 1.5 million euros over 2020 and 2021 to develop, but also scale up our solution through the help of many partners, which you can see here. So very much in line with EIT Urban Mobility's vision, we have here implemented the extended knowledge triangle, and we put the cities for Lublin, Munich, Copenhagen, and Istanbul at the very center of our approach, and then worked with research and educational institutions such as TU Eindhoven and the Fraunhofer Institute and UCL, as well as industrial partners that you can see on the left-hand side, MVV, Achmea, TomTom, Isbak, and Gale, to provide this solution to citizens. And we are very happy, of course, that Open Agile and Agile Smart Cities has also joined our consortium in 2021. So AI travel really gives, or we believe strongly that AI travel gives citizens a choice to shape the way they prefer to travel within their city. It provides accessible and inclusive mobility service and improves long-term health and well-being for everyone living in our cities. And with that, I'd like to conclude and remind everyone, please do contact Dr. Banyan Barry, who has led this research throughout the past 2 years, if you'd like to know more about this, but I'm of course here as well to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Helge. I think another great project. I think with support from EIT and very interesting in partners and looking at the work you've been doing also, of course, testing the technologies. So very interesting. As the other presentations, I think we have a lot going on, a lot happening, thinking about the future of smart mobility, and I'm pretty sure this is a great platform for us to be exchanging. I think we had some questions during the session that have been answered already, and unfortunately, I think it was quite short session, so we don't have much any time left now. But I'm sure the presentations will be shared, and then people can connect with you, and I think that's one of the ideas for the event as well, so we can all be connected and continue the conversation. So again, thank you very much, Seppo, Olaf, Claudia, and Helge, for the great presentations and support. I think, yeah, let's continue this conversation and network. And again, sorry if we don't have time for further discussions, further questions, but I think we at the presentation, we could see the great work and activities that you all been doing. So yeah, now I'd just like to pass it on to Michael Mokin for the next session. And thank you all again for this one, and looking forward to continue our collaboration. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you very much.